This is your host, Gabe Morales.
As I mentioned in my 2002 closing address, this will be the last few videos I'll do on California prison gangs for a while. I do intend to cover a quick overview of East Coast and Southeast United States gangs before moving on to organized crime and true crime stories this year. We'll also cover some stories of corruption committed by cops and politicians.
This episode will follow up on my Mexican Mafia videos, and I also wanted to cover a few more Varrios and individuals outside of LA County for some of the Sureno videos that I covered in my previous series. I realize I have a wide variety of viewers, some with very little knowledge of these Varrios and gangs, and some with a lot of knowledge. So I appreciate it when you correct or fact check me. Please just make sure to do it respectfully. I have a lot of experience living near a lot of these individuals, as well as directly dealing with them on the job for 4 decades. So it could be that we just have a difference of opinion, but I also can admit when I'm way off. So gracias. It is important to be aware that since the early 1990s, the MA has had control and taxed most major barrios in Southern California, and even some Sureño clicas in Northern California. Most of these gangs pay homage to La MA as sort of an insurance policy. Most know that they will go to jail and prison one day, and who will be there waiting for them? A carnal or camarada put in charge, and they will be targeted for attack if they or their barrio are in bad standings. This also applies to the federal BOP, and more Sureños from other states abide by the Sureño reglas in the federal system. But there are always exceptions, like the Maravillas in East LA, or Mara Salvatrucha, as recently happened in the feds. So before some of you nitpickers jump all over me, I am well aware, more than most, of the complexity involving Sureños and La M. It is one of the major reasons why I started the International Latino Gang Investigators Association. I'm going to start off with the Inland Empire. And if you really want to know a lot about Inland Empire gangs, more than just this episode, I highly recommend purchasing Empereros, Sureño Gangs in the Inland Empire, written by my colleagues, Andrew Eways and Todd De Palma. Both of these guys know their stuff, and I think they would admit that I helped bring them into ILGIA for that very reason. Right above Pomona, where I used to live in LA County, but located in San Bernardino County, just across the county line, is Laverne. This is a fairly nice area, but it has a small old barrio there, which is where Alfred Chato Ortega is from. Chino is located just south Pomona, where many of my relatives are from. On my dad's side, Chino has always been known for its smell. And by that, I mean it has a lot of cow pastures and slaughterhouses. And being what cows do, the doo-doo, I could always tell when I got close to Chino. It also has a very popular Chino swamp meat. Chino is also where CIM is located, where my mother-in-law started out working. And I think I mentioned before in other videos, she is the one who talked me into working for CDC. I also have a cousin that works there, and my wife's best friend's son still works there, I believe. And I also have friends from the Chicano Correctional Workers Association who work there. So I've kept tab on the prison and prison politics for many years, and I've heard many war stories over the years. The Chino Sinners is a very interesting gang. They started out, as many gangs did, as a car club. They would often sport jackets emblazoned with Chino Sinners on the back and cruise around in their cars, where they would sometimes bump into rival car clubs who also belonged to gangs from different cities. In the 1970s, the Sinners began to have major issues with the Ontario Black Angels. So the Chino Sinners decided to align themselves with the West Familia prison gang. It just so happens that at that time, CIM was an NF stronghold via NF General Babo Sosa, who I discussed in the Top NF video, part 1. So this worked out good for the Sinners, as the NF protected the sinners, and the sinners smuggled in dope for them and provided safe houses in town for the NF. But not all vatos in Chino became NF. Some ran with La M, like Manuel Chida Roybal Padilla and his brother Gilbert, who was killed in Fresno in the 1970s by Alfie Sosa, Dan Montellano, and Tati Torres. The Ontario Black Angels have a very infamous history in the Inland Empire and were allegedly started by Daryl Dashin D. Castreon's dad, Frank, also called Mosco, around 1954. Past MM members from the Black Angels have included disgraced shot caller Tupe Hernandez, who I mentioned in previous episodes, Ronald Turbazia, Juanito Gil, Mondo Barajas, Juvenal Kenny Vega Soto, and Javier Jr. Sandoval, all, as far as I know, still in good standings with the fellas. Cucamonga is an old barrio and often confused with the much larger and newer Rancho Cucamonga area, where I also have family, and it is home to the CDC SSU office that tracks prison gang members. Cuca has produced many prison gang members, including current NF General Joseph Pinky Hernandez, who I also covered in the Top 10 NF Part 2 video. It also had an MA shot caller named Arthur Tudy Estrada, who was a controlling force at Corcoran State Prison for many years until the brothers decided that he was too controlling and too greedy, and so now is listed as no good. Fontana, also known as Felony Flats, has always been known as a rough area, and my friend Joe Preciado, current VP of ILJ, currently owns my old baby, my 51 Chevy Purple Rain that I sold to him before I moved to Hawaii. Joe, I can't wait to see the finished product after you're done rebuilding it. Fontana produced Emero David Fierro, who was sent to San Quentin's death row for murder beef, but appealed and was sent to Pelican Bay SHU, and I believe has been housed at Salinas Valley State Prison the last few years. Bloomington, known as Blumas, is a small farm town just below Fontana and is noted as being the home base of Sal Toro Hernandez. Toro has been a very controversial figure, but has managed to escape the fate of many other former meros by being a huge dope connection for La M, and has been backed up by many of the heavyweights as a result. He was also involved in a big scam at the Indian Casino in San Bernardino. I might do a separate story on that later. Nearby Colton has produced a few MA, such as Pretty Bob Bustillos, who later dropped out and turned Christian. It also produced Negro Cabral, as well as Churro Quiroz, Sleepy Rios,
and Eric Payaso Saldivar, who was put up by membership by none other than MA founder Huerba Flores and co-signed by Daryl Castrillon and Roland Berry. But some say that that vote was never accepted, and he was never made a carnal. San Bernardino County is well known to me, as while I was in the Marine Corps, I visited virtually every town and city in it. Few people know that validated federal MA member Christian Bomber Trigg was from there, as well as being incarcerated when he was a youth in 1987 at the King County Department of Youth Services, which was part of the agency that I worked for almost 24 years. San Bernardino is often known as Verdugo and has many different gangs that have had MA connections over the years, including that of Güero Verde, who was an MA force at Corcoran for many years, but committed suicide after his wife was killed. I'll probably do a separate episode on that at a later date.
Including the dead president's situation. Further out east is Redlands, where two other Cabrals, Anthony, a.k.a. Chapo, and Gilbert, a.k.a. Gibby, are from. I think they're related to Negro, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Moving on to Riverside County. One of the oldest barrios there is Casablanca. Riverside is also known as Rivas. Casablanca is another good example of how many 1960s to 70s barrios sported club jackets, as seen here. Casablanca produced many MA like Tio Benny Romero and Ben Termite Aldama. Corona used to be a small town when I first met my wife, who lived there in the early 80s when I was dating her. This is her old house, located just blocks away from 4th Street Barrio Locos, which is weird because my old neighborhood in West Seattle, White Center, was called Barrio Loco. Oh well, one of those many ironies in my life. Corona has produced a few emeros over the years like George Mangas Aguirre, George Reyes, and Nick Tomate Tomayo.
El Valle Imperial had a few MA come from it. Popular YouTuber Frank Conejo Flores is from Brole, which is slang for Brawley. Some say he was never a canal recognized by the state, but I've listened to his stories on another channel and can verify many of his claims while he was at Folsom and in the Bureau of Prisons. Orange County has a lot of barrios, but many people tend to think of it as being all recreational playgrounds, upper to middle class neighborhoods, and lovely beaches. It has all of those things, but it also has a dark backside, even just blocks away from Disneyland in Anaheim. Big Joe Ponce Castillo is an MA member from the Alley Boys, and we'll see as an example. Eastside Fullerton Tokerstown is an old gang in Orange County also. I had Arthur Capone Calderon from the Tokers at New Folsom Violence Control Unit in the early 1990s, where he functioned as a camarada. He also did time in Oregon DOC and was noted there as being a SOAR 13 shot caller. Santa Ana is a lower middle class working city, and my wife used to work there as a dental assistant. I would often visit her during lunchtime and bring her food from a little hole in the wall located on Main Street. Maybe some of you guys recall.
All I remember is that for $2, you could get a chorizo con papa burrito and a glass of horchata. What a deal. For many years, Peter Sano Ojeda was considered the godfather of Orange County. Sano was well connected, so much so that the father of a current police chief of a major U.S. city was very good friends with him. Sano had no problems rubbing elbows with politicians and criminals alike. Sano was a very good example of what this channel is all about: gangsters, cops, and politicians. He was challenged a few times by youngsters, but always prevailed. He was good friends with Joe Morgan, and they communicated often. Like I stated before, I believe they also discussed the EME edict. But definitely, Sano was out there in the parks, spreading the EME gospel to the troops. F Troop is a very large gang, and this is where Raymond Champ Mendez is from, who got caught up in the 1990s RICO case that I've mentioned in several episodes. Champ also acted as a paralegal and is presently housed at the BOP in Hazleton. San Diego also has many of the same features as Orange County, with the addition of one thing: it is literally located just across the border from Mexico. I was what they call a Hollywood Marine. I went to MCRD in San Diego and was stationed at Camp Pendleton for a year. And before I was married, I would visit house parties at places like Pozole, which is a great Mexican soup, but also the name of a well-known barrio located just outside the gates of the base. And Mero Manuel Zarate was from there, as well as many others. I heard Martin Corona also had connections to Pozole. Maybe some of you cops or G's can let me know if that is correct. All I remember is that he was sponsored in Corcoran Shoe by Daryl Castreon, Artie Guzman, and Stony Galas, but later dropped out, and I believe he wrote a book.
Crazy Rudy Espuro was from Escondido and was well known for schooling younger Southern United Raza on how to become good camaradas for the EME.
Jose Bat Marquez is from a San Diego barrio called Del Sol and was an enforcer for the Ariano Felix organization. He fled parole down to Mexico, but was captured, tried, and sent to the BOP. It was there in the BOP where Bat exercised control over Sureños in Washington State for a while.
Bat was close to David C.H., a.k.a. Papa Baron Corona, who hailed from Logan Heights, Trentas, and both worked for the Ariano Felix organization, also known as the Tijuana Cartel. I'll probably do a separate spiel on that at a later date, as I personally know one of the Mexican coroners who did his autopsy. Ricardo Gato Martinez was a longtime memero from Logan Heights, who was close to fellow mafioso Robert Tawa Marin, who ran a local MA headquarters out of his barbershop. Gato was a very good artist. He is seen here, second from the left, sitting on a bench while he was housed in the Bureau of Prisons, on the cover of my Mexican Mafia book. He was later killed by Celly in the summer of 2019 by a young Sureno in the federal BOP system. This was not a sanctioned hit, and the youngster immediately locked it up. Raul Güero Sherm Leon is from Shelltown in southeast San Diego. This barrio was called that because of the amount of seashells that was often found in the surrounding sandy soil of the area. Leon was an original Gamma Street Boys Shelltown member. He rose up through the Sureno ranks to become a very vocal and high-profile MA member, becoming one of 4 MA Mesa members in the California Department of Corrections. I had a couple of his homeboy hitters, Joe Agüero and Victor Carrasco, at New Folsom Violence Control Unit in the early 1990s. Güero Sherm was well known for writing many huilas to different carnals and camaradas, often using female couriers like Margaret Adelita Farrell. But eventually the carnales got tired of his mouth, stepping on too many toes, so they put him on no good standings, and he is currently on keep separate status, housed at the ADX in Florence, Colorado. And of course, we cannot forget Hector and Ronnie Ayala from Old Town National City, who have been a controlling force at San Quentin Death Row for many years. Ronnie was recently mentioned in Operation Scrapbusters, a wordplay on breaking up Sureños loyal to La M.
George Silent Mums Ruiz was a longtime MA vet, but died in custody of COVID in April 2021. Carlos Diaz is also from Logan Heights, as well as his brother Sal. Richard Cheeks Buchanan is also from there and is mentioned in Operation Keys to the City. Frank Chino Madriaga Macias hails from National City, and like many other Mexican Mafia heavyweights, ended up in the federal BOP, but was released in October 2022. Colonia Oxnard is well known for having lots of gang members. It used to be mostly rural, and a lot of it still is, and so he has produced some NF members like original West Familia Mexicana member Black Jess Valenzuela, as well as Death Row Joe Gonzalez, covered in several previous episodes on the NF. Colonia Oxnard is also known as Chiques, and produced EME members like Manuel Chapo and Robert Papitas Amaro, Evaristo Blanco, Raul Güero Holguin, Gilbert Angel Ontiveros, and more recently, Edward Evo Mora, who oversaw EME operations in the area and even controlled part of some jails down in Mexico. And many of his supporters have since been indicted and locked up on the RICO case. In fact, Sureno is being hit so many RICOs that I heard one guy say the feds are throwing RICOs at gangs in California like Oprah. You get a RICO, you get a RICO, and you get a RICO. I'll end with Kern County and Bakersfield area, which has produced NF members back in the day, such as NFM founder Chalo Hernandez, but it also has produced MM members, such as his cousin, Rodolfo Cheyenne Cadena, who claimed Barrio Viejo Bakers. Richard Dogface Ruiz was also a heavy hermero from Bakers. He was hit at Old Folsom and dropped out around 1980. Another Bakers heavyweight for many years was Raymond Chavo Perez, who died on June 19, 2019. Many people in Bakers respected Chavo, but I would say that probably more feared him, as he was known to be a bully and was a very active figure in the EME and taxing Kern County gangsters for many years. So like I said, I'll probably do a lot more episodes focusing just on some of these Varrios. That's a brief overview for now. I know I left out a lot of heavy hitters and many Varrios located outside of LA County, but I only had so much time. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and learned something new. This is Gabe Morales signing off. Gangsters, cops, and politicians.